Welcome to the MMHP in the 989. Channeling all styles and eras of Michigan music history from the city by the bay. And now, here's your host, Scott Baker.
Well, we're back here at Studio 163 in Essexville, Michigan, and we're going to follow up on a story that we started with Mr. Scott Seeberger. We were lucky to have him in as a guest just recently. We invited him back when he was putting suggestions for some of our future guests, and a person that we've actually wanted to contact was the great country artist who's done a little bit more than just country. Mr. Butch Heath out of Midland. How you doing, Butch?
Good. How are you? Nice to be here.
I'm glad you are here. Thank you for coming, and we invited Scott back to be part of the show. How you doing, Scott?
Good. It's so great to be here again.
I'm glad we got to time this out and get this all together because these stories are important, and our MMHP fan base loves these tales, these stories, and the back history. So
important to me. I came last week.
Well, that's, you know how important it is to have our guests here, and we know that they care, is when they come early like that. So, yeah, you got your way. You didn't have to leave any Reese's on your trip or anything to get your way back. So, yeah, I'm glad you got here. How's it going, Dr. J?
It's going great. I just started my Elvis Presley course on Wednesday, and it's always fun doing them at SVSU. Great equipment, and we're in a kind of an auditorium, a giant screen. It's, and the people there, they really appreciate it,
That's
get
awesome.
Applause and things like that.
Oh, cool.
Doesn't happen too often when you're doing presentations and classes.
That's cool. That's rock and roll for you right there.
There it is. Yeah. Well, when you're dealing with Elvis, you got a pretty good subject there.
And he's a pretty hot topic this summer.
Oh, you bet, with that movie, which is now streaming for free on if you have HBO Max. So I'm kind of anxious to look at it again. I was so impressed with it when we saw it in the theater.
And most of us thought it was going to be about Elvis, but it was more about the
Colonel.
Yeah.
Well, a lot about the Colonel, yeah, that's for sure. But boy, that Austin Butler that played Elvis.
Oh yeah.
What a performance! I mean, man, I'm thinking
Wasn't
maybe
he
Academy
Australian?
Award for that guy.
Yeah. Did a great job.
Wow. Sir Fred, how's it going?
Real good.
Good. Having a good week?
Yeah.
Excellent.
Back working on my book. I was just working on the chapter on Scott and his high school radio station.
Excellent. Good timing.
And I found through an obituary another old polka band from Bay City that I had never heard of before.
Wow.
Now I can't think of his name.
I was going to say I might remember him because I lived in Bay City.
Oh, yeah.
After high school when I first got married.
Wow. You got to touch a lot of different music styles all over this area, didn't you?
Yeah.
Were you ever in a polka band?
No, I never was, but closest I got, Meyer Herzog, in Frankenmuth, he had run that whole festival.
Yeah.
But when he first started, or a couple years after he started, he had polkas in one tent and country in the other. Had Bill Anderson, and some of the names are the has-beens, I guess he used to call them. But the country people know him. But anyway, we did a country band and the polka band. So.
Wow.
Did you back Bill Anderson?
No, he had his own band.
Oh, okay.
We have back several. We backed Tanya Tucker and Dave Dudley, a whole bunch of different.
We're probably jumping ahead here, but I want to make sure I ask you this. Did you happen to back Tanya Tucker when she played the Saginaw Auditorium? Or
No,
the
but Bay City
Wendell
Fair.
Arena?
When she played the Bay City Fair. We were talking about WXOX a long time, a while ago. Mm-hmm. Well, Don used to promote some shows, and he brought her into the Bay County Fair. And I'll tell you, her song was Delta Dawn.
Oh, right.
Before Bette Midler got it.
Yeah.
And so we had to hustle and learn that song.
Yeah, I saw her in Saginaw. It must have been one of her very early tours. I think she was only 13 or 14 years old.
Yeah, I wonder if that was a Bay City Fair or was it in the fairgrounds or
no? This was in the old. Well, at that time it was the hockey arena, Wendell Arena. Is that what they called it then?
Oh yeah.
No, that was not.
They were doing all kinds of concerts back in those days.
Yeah.
Not only country, but a lot of rock shows there too.
Right.
Fantastic.
She also played at Saginaw Valley State University outdoors. Back, wow, geez, probably 30, 40 years ago.
What year were you trying to reference her, Gary? Do you
Well, it
know?
was in the 70s.
70s, okay.
It was when her first album came out,
Wow.
which I think might have been called Delta Dawn.
Probably
wasn't
was,
it? Yeah. Very first thing.
Wow.
Well, everybody talked how she did some suggestive songs, Would you lay with me in a field of snow?
Right.
And here she was, 13 or 14.
Wow.
But it was interesting. But her daddy was her manager, and he kind of watched her pretty good.
I'm sure he did.
She had a sister, I should say a daughter. She had a sister that sang pretty good too. And when my single came out a long time ago, long time ago, we went to Nashville and played it. They played it on WSM, which was a big thrill for me because that's a big country station. And her sister was there and had a single the same time as I did.
Wow.
And neither one of us went anywhere.
Did she go under the name Tucker also, or did they use a different name?
I think a different name.
Okay.
Tanya's name was Tucker, though her dad's name was Tucker. But now it slipped my mind what her real name is, her first name, but I'll think of it tomorrow.
I know it. I do that all the time.
Right.
I remember another WXOX show with Crystal Gale at the Saginaw Fair.
Oh, yeah.
You probably were at that one, weren't you?
Yeah.
I was a judge that year
Oh, yeah.
for a talent
Oh, yeah,
contest.
yeah.
To
And
make sure they had blue eyes or something?
Yeah.
Yeah, and Bobby Reynolds was a contestant,
Oh, yeah.
and he didn't win.
Oh, yeah.
And look where he went.
Yeah.
Bobby Randall?
Bobby Randall.
Yeah,
What
Bobby
did I say?
Randall.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, Bobby Randall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He plays with you, doesn't he?
He played, whenever he comes home, he played in my band, yeah.
Okay.
Well, actually, he was playing with me when a guy named Don King, I don't know if I've ever heard of him, but he had a couple of hits. We booked him in a little bar, and when we got through, he asked Bobby if he wanted to move to Nashville, and that was good for Bobby, but not me. But that was his start. Then Don King just didn't sing anymore. He did a lot of writing, but that's how he kind of got started.
To take us back, Butch, give us some little bit of backstory. Where did you come from? What got you into music in the first place, and what was your first steps in music?
Originally from Midland, as far as where I lived, and my mother was a preacher, and
Your mother was a
my
preacher.
mother was a preacher, right, in a little church in Midland, and then my brother took guitar lessons, and he'd bring his lessons home, and I'd look at him and. He quit playing, and I continued. So I think my first guitar was in when I was 14, and it was any guitar players happen to be listening. It was a white Stella. They call them Stella guitars.
Yeah.
For anybody that played guitar, I think Sears still sold them, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
But then we finally kept practicing, and finally got a little band together in Midland called the Rockabillys, half rock and roll, half billies. And everybody in the country was using that same name. But anyway, we played in high school and assemblies and things like that.
Were you in high school at the time, Butch?
Yeah,
Was it Midland High?
So what
Midland High, yeah.
what artists kind of inspired you to get into a band and and to play music? Was there anybody that?
Well, there was some local guys that were playing, and just like us, we were just local, but they played. Most of us played for free at that time. You didn't know you could get paid by it. But then we played some teenage dances because, like Scott said, we used to play a little rock and roll. I hate to say that now when you're in the country, No, that's the rockabillys, I guess.
Yeah.
And
Do you remember some of the songs that you played?
Rock Around the Clock.
Okay.
Billy Haley in the comments. Okay.
Yeah, I do. And we did. Not Scott. Blue Suede Shoes. Yeah, and
Butch, didn't you play in some halls in Midland County, and kids would come out and see you?
One of our first big jobs when we were still in high school was in the Averill Township Hall on Hope Road. Matter of fact, my folks lived on Hope Road, and we're going back now. No wonder I can remember things. But yeah, we played there, and we set this up ourselves. I think we charged 50 cents or $1 to get in for the kids. And then another thing that's really memorable is our PA system happened to be our guitar player had one big old Fender amp that none of us could lift. And then we carried the bass player was Chuck Harris, and he played a stand-up bass. We had the bass and the amplifier, and that was our PA system as well. So we all sang through one guitar amp and this big old bass we put in our car.
Wow.
And then we did a couple gigs up in Coleman, just this back when we were kids again. And
were you kind of the front man of the band?
yeah,
or?
I guess I was. I don't know if I was elected or maybe I owned the first PA system. That usually happens. And everybody else used it.
That's Bob Hausler's story when he was with us. He's like, "I was popular, but everybody used my PA
Yeah,
too."
I know Bob. Yeah.
I was reading that some announcer at one of your gigs as the Rockabillys kind of promised you or something that you could be on a Ted Mack amateur hour.
Yeah, there was a guy, and I can't think of his name now, but Ted Mack was a big one on TV, you know, and he came I'll tell you what it was Marty Robbins' show. And we opened the thing for Marty at the Midland High School.
No kidding.
Yeah,
Wow.
and that was fun, but this guy was brought in as a MC and told everybody that he was a representative of Ted Mack.
About what year would that be? When in the 50s?
It was probably later 50s maybe.
Is that at the end of high school? Yeah.
Yeah, I graduated in 58, so.
Okay.
I barely remember the Ted Mack, but I remember the Arthur Godfrey.
Arthur Godfrey,
Yeah.
Same
well, anyway,
idea.
it come out that this Ted Mack was he was a fake, and we had our picture in the paper. Local group makes good, you know. And to make it worse, Midland Daily News has a thing. Do you remember? So every year they put it back in the paper. Rubbing a little salt in the wound.
Oh,
But after
my
a while, we
goodness.
got used to it.
Butch, do you remember any of the other bands that might have been kind of similar to you in that era of the 1950s?
Well, I know Kurt Gay had a band, and that he was kind of a rockabilly. That's what we called it, but he was one of the ones. Bobby Randall played in a band. He's a couple years younger than me, and a couple. Maybe one. Do you hear that, Bobby? But he played in a band too, and they had he played with a guy named Dave Petrosky. Anybody know him? He's passed now, got in a car wreck, but real good guitar player. But he played with me, and then a guy named Bill Werner, who happens to be a uncle to Jeff Wallachengas.
Oh,
You know
really?
Jeff
Oh,
with
yeah. No, Jeff.
And Jeff was just in my band just before I gave up the ship. But
And you played guitar, but were you lead or rhythm or
I played rhythm. Yeah,
rhythm?
Yeah, I've had my first guitar was a Stella, a $15 one or something, but then I kind of moved up. I've always liked Ovation guitars. That's the one that Glenn Campbell plays, and I got 3 or 4 of them. And I should say I put it in Elderly's on consignment to sell it.
But didn't
So because I don't play anymore, I got neuropathy real bad. So.
Wow.
But no sense in sitting around and getting dust.
So when you were back there in the 50s playing, and you were you booking those shows yourself?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I never had a real manager. I've had people that thought they were trying to get bookings so they could make a little more money. you know.
What was your inspiration for? I mean, did you just say, "Hey, this place will have a band," or "This will try this"? Or
Well, I guess like you said, we were fairly popular for a local band, and I really never. I don't think I hardly went out and looked for jobs very often. They seemed to come.
that's good. So the floodgates open immediately.
Yeah, but I couldn't play only a little bit because I was married, and I worked at a grocery store, and I was the assistant manager, so I could work all the hours I wanted to, you know.
Wow. So was
About
this
60 hours a week?
that was in the early '60s at this point?
Yeah. Worked for a company called National Food Store here in Bay City.
Okay.
And so I did that, and then played music as much as I could. We played 3 nights a week, and I worked 60 hours a week. So I don't know how I did it, but
Passion.
but it was fun. I really enjoyed it, or I wouldn't be doing it. So
Yeah.
Who was Butch Heath and the Ravens? When did they get started?
oh, that was later. That was it was after high school. I know that. Yeah, we were the Rockabillys and the Ravens. Yeah.
Well, you were the Bill Hickey trio before
Yes,
that. though, right?
yeah. You're going back. But Bill Hickey played with me at Palmer's Club 20 out on 20.
So there was just 3 of you.
Yeah.
Wow.
Did you have a drummer, or
Yeah,
was it?
dual haze.
And so was what, drums and 2 guitars?
Drums and 2 guitars, yeah.
All right. So
And then
was that strictly a country band?
Well,
then?
I'm sorry, wait a minute. We had 2 guitars and a bass. Ed Schreier played bass. Then eventually we got a drummer. Yeah. And that drummer also played keyboard. He did Jerry Lee Lewis. So,
there we go.
That was quite a... Well, I guess Jerry Lee Lewis was hot at that time, too, in the
Yeah.
early 60s.
Yeah. Was that when he went country, or was that still the rock
He
and roll
was
Jerry Lee?
probably more rock and roll at that
Okay.
time, yeah.
But that's still that Sun Records.
Yeah.
And Bill Haley in the comments, that whole
Right.
everything's coming into the focus for country
Right,
now
right.
as country into the '60s. So you were just at the
Kind of
fringe of that.
Yeah, fringe of it, yeah, just when it started.
I get
Yeah. It was a good time.
Oh, so when you were in the '60s, you said you got married. You got married early then.
Yeah, I got married in 60, matter of fact.
Okay, so 2 years out of high school.
2 years out of high school, yeah.
Now, your wife Janet, did she used to come to your gigs? And
No, she didn't. Hardly ever. I think first time she saw me was in a high school assembly, and that's when she kind of got to know me. And then we didn't date till after we graduated, and we dated for a while. She was 18 and I was 20, and we've been married 65 years now. So.
Well,
Very cool.
congratulations.
Yeah,
That's,
beautiful.
And she's been
That's
a
quick.
great supporter
Oh,
for
she
you
is.
all those years.
Since she didn't go when the kids were, she took care of them and made sure they were ready for school and all that. But now, since they're all gone, she helps, and she sells my T-shirts at Freeland. We did that Freeland thing for 18 years, and so she's good at that, and she puts stuff on Facebook for me. And my daughter actually does more of that, and she's a singer too.
That's how I contacted you. I saw your daughter, a post that she made because we left Scott's episode, and he's like, "You got to track down Butch." And I went to your page because we've been friends for a while on there. A long time ago, we hooked up on that, and I looked at I saw your daughter hitting posts, and I said, "Can you tell your dad I sent him a message?" And boom, you were here early.
Yeah, twice. one whole week.
Excellent. No, that's great. I love the 65 years. That's incredible. That just
Yeah.
as long as almost your music career. That's
Yeah,
so your music career's 68 years.
yeah.
Yeah.
About that.
Almost 70 years
Almost,
of
yeah.
playing music in their area.
Wasn't it the Ravens that you recorded the 45?
Yep. Yep.
And that would have been 1970s.
Probably. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
'Cause
We
you brought it into the record shop, or somehow I got them.
did you?
And that was the only 45 or the single you did. You did not record an album or other
No,
singles?
just a single 45, and then Jim Fritzler, my guitar player, he's passed now. He recorded. I think our deal was our contract, or if you want to call it a contract, but it's for 2 singles. So I sang one, and he sang the next one, and that was our big break.
Who wrote that song? Out of curiosity, did you write that?
No, there was Jim. I wrote one of them. It's called "Like Yesterday." It's a ballad, and a fellow from Bay City here wrote it, and Jim and I wrote the music to it. And then the other two, one a girl writer named Lola. I think Johnson is her name. I can't think of it, but she wrote one. And one was written by a famous writer who I can't think of his name right now, but he's from Detroit. You probably know. Wrote a lot of country songs, and he's from Detroit.
Okay, not sure right now.
Maybe Harlan Howard.
Oh, wow, yeah. Harlan Howard, I think, was from Michigan. I'm not sure where.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, he did I Fall to Pieces.
Yeah.
A number of other big songs.
Yeah. We went in this studio where the producer was, and they got thousands of records there, demos that people have made, and all we did is listen to a few and got the copies of the lyrics, and we went back to the hotel and listened again and tried to learn it, and all. We didn't do it like they do now. We had to do it in one weekend. Now, when I made this last CD, I went down.
Which
Jeff
one?
and I. Oh yeah.
This one?
Yeah, show everybody.
Which one? This is the most recent, or is this the old? That's the older. Then this one after that.
That one, yeah.
Pass that over to Mike Beatty over there. Our archivist is in the house.
Okay.
Mike keeps track of all of our stuff there.
We went down. Jeff Wallakengas and I went to Nashville, laid down the vocal tracks, and Jeff sang harmony and played bass, and then Cliff Thompson, who was playing for Randy Travis at that time.
Wow.
And also the steel guitar player that was playing for Randy. But anyway, they did their parts. We sent it back to Michigan here, and Arlen Willett went over to Grand Rapids in the studio and laid down the tracks on the keyboard. And then we sent the darn thing to Alabama. That Bobby was down there at Alabama studio, and he added the fiddle.
Really?
So just send it back and forth and all electronic stuff. And then we got a producer, Randy, the guy that plays for Sawyer Brown now, plays lead for him. He added the harmonies, him and his wife. So it went all the way around.
Those two albums were done in the over the last 10 years?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The last one was done about 2 years ago.
Okay.
But the first one is recorded in my home studio, which is my family room.
Okay.
And I use tracks. So it's, but I got to tell you, it's better than some of the cheap CDs that I've heard coming out of Nashville. If someone's not a good engineer and stuff, but that was.
Well, I want to come up and talk about those two records here in a bit. And I see I was looking at the details on them before I came in. I want to backtrack to that single that you put out, and that was in the '70s. Fred said you delivered that. Was that the first time you did any recording, or were you?
No, that was the first time. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you remember where you recorded that?
The single was recorded in Nashville. That's the one that Scotty Moore was a producer.
Really? Yeah. From Elvis's. Yeah.
Yeah.
How did you line that up? That Scotty got to be the producer.
That's funny. I guess of course, everybody loved Elvis, and I liked his playing because it was simple. That's the kind of stuff I didn't like all that fancy stuff. So I don't know if we just call. I don't know how the heck I got. This is terrible. I can't answer that question. But somehow we got a hold of Scotty, and he got a hold of all the musicians for us. And
do you remember the year? 75, maybe 74?
Well, probably 73 to 75, right in there somewhere. My wife would know. We can get that.
I know it was on a yellow-colored label, if I recall.
Yeah, it was. I should have brought one. I was going through my old drawers the other day, and I found a couple. So
very cool.
I used to have it.
If you go to a rummage sale, it's one of the hot items. I don't know. I didn't have any album. It's really weird, a single. You don't think of selling them, but I sold a lot of singles.
That was a big deal.
I sold them for $1, And
Just sell them at your gigs.
yeah,
Yeah, sure.
And that's the song you also had on the Nashville radio station too,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. Now that was coming out of the '60s. We didn't really finish the '60s. What did you do? Did you maintain the band that you were in the early
We
'60s?
had, the Ravens we had together a long time.
Okay.
And then I can't remember all the dates, but then we had a band called the Country Reunion Band. When I got together with some different guys, we called that the Reunion Band. And then that lasted for maybe 3-4 years. And
What was your inspiration on those? I mean, you're coming in now to an era where rock and roll is starting to go like Beatles and stuff.
Yeah.
And what made you stay on the road that you're on?
the only thing we did was just a little bit of Beatles and that
You
was
did?
rock and roll went. And then we just, I guess because I happened to be the leader of the band and I didn't like the rock and roll, I liked the country better. And what
That
we
was
did.
how you felt. Okay.
Yeah, and it so happens there was a lot of people that agreed with me, and either that or had a lot of cousins. I'm not sure, but no, we've always had a good band and a good following.
Well, you had that Butch Heath and the Ravens. That lasted quite a while. I mean, it's hard to keep a band together for a long time. What was the secret to your success, your
I think
longevity?
none of us had a big head, I think that's one of the biggest things. We did, you're right, we played, because now it's all coming back. We played at the Grove in Sanford for 9 years,
Really? Like a house gig.
Yeah.
like a house gig. Every Friday and Saturday, the same people would come and see us. And I could never understand that, but I was very thankful for
Oh,
it.
yeah.
I think I saw you at the Red Oak in Sanford.
Well, that was one of our little secrets. They were about 6 miles apart. So we'd play the Red Oak for a while, and then the Grove would say, "Hey, we'll give you another $100." So we'd go to the Grove, and we did that here in Bay City too at the Empire Show Bar. We played there in the Starlight Room out on Center Road,
Okay.
and we'd go back and forth there with those fellas.
In Midland, we have a program in the summertime called Tunes by the Tridge, free outdoor concert. And one of the largest audiences I've ever seen drawn for that event was when Butch Heath played.
Yeah.
You had just a huge crowd.
That's what the gal told us that hired us.
Yeah. And we're talking in the hundreds, maybe over 1,000. It was a big crowd.
It was big as a Tridge, yeah.
Yeah.
And so happened the weather was good. And
When was this?
Oh, this was recent, within the last 5 years.
oh yeah,
I'd say.
it was probably 5 or 6 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know they do that every year, but I wasn't sure with him having just recently retired how long ago that would have been.
No,
But-
we did that. That was like I said, 5 or 6 years ago. And this Freeland thing I did. I don't know if you're going to talk about that, but
Oh, yeah.
that we did that for 18 years. I did it, and then when I announced my retirement, Jeff and Donnie and the other guys in the other band, they had one more time, and they said they call it the Butch Palooza.
There you go.
And that was just this last summer,
That was-
like
yeah,
June or
yeah.
July.
They call it the 18th and a half, I think they call it,
Yeah.
because of COVID got it.
Oh, yeah.
And they had all the T-shirts this year had my picture on the front, and
Wonderful.
it was a little embarrassing, but I appreciated what they did. That was nice.
Yeah.
And that event drew like 1,000 or 2,000 ish in that range. It was a
I
big
think
crowd
that
too.
someone guessed about 1,500 this year.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was when we did a lot of it ourselves, but we have the secret was having all these other bands with us. They bring their crowd, they bring their fans, and then we have single singers that we would back, and that really worked well. And mom and dad come with a little girl singer, and some of those kids played with us for 12, 15 years.
You had to watch him grow.
Yeah.
Did you take the Ravens out on the road, or were you strictly
No, just
around?
everything was just local. One year I got a listing from the fair boards of all the little towns, and I sent them a copy and with a couple CDs, and we got like maybe 10 or 12 bookings out of that, and then we went to all these little towns, Bad Axe and all these, and that was the closest on the road, but. We did pretty well that year, yeah.
Wow.
But I don't think I ever would have wanted to go on the road.
Well, how did you get the Nashville thing then? I mean, it sounded like you might have had a little
I guess
tour
it was
trail
just being a little aggressive and calling some people that I didn't have any connections. I wished I remembered how I got a hold of Scotty, but I was telling him we talked several times, and then finally we went down and met it with him personally, and he gave us the price, and he got all the musicians for us. And,
well, he had a production company. I remember seeing it in Billboard or something.
I think he did, yeah. After he left, Elvis and James Burton came with him. Then he started doing some different stuff. But
fantastic! You got aggressive and you called down there and said, "I want to get through the Opry and I want to put my stamp down." And you stuck, but you stayed around here mainly.
Yeah,
it was Mid Michigan was your home.
Yep.
Okay.
I'm from Midland originally, but when I worked first got married, I worked for this national food store, which maybe some of you Bay City people might remember that. Mm-hmm. But I worked there and then played in Midland at the Palmer's Club 20.
Okay, all right. That's right on 20 there.
Now, when Butch Heath and the Ravens came to an end, was that because you just kind of got tired of playing all the time?
I did quit. I quit 3 or 4 times, but I did quit the Ravens for a short time. Then I come back with yesterday.
Was that the
reunion band? Yeah.
Well, there was the Sundance Kids too.
Kids was in there too. Yeah.
But those were different musicians than the Ravens,
it was different musicians. I had Carl Klutz, a real good guitar player. Him and his sister Beverly played with me, and Steve Windling. And Steve lives in, I think, Oklahoma now, and he's doing a George Strait tribute show.
Oh, really?
His bass, and he's doing real well.
So did Beverly sing?
Yeah, she was a good singer.
So you did like country duets?
Yeah, we did. Kenny Rogers and Dottie West had a song. We did that song all the time. I can't think of it.
Did you do any of the Conway, Loretta,
Yeah,
Lynn
we did
things?
a couple, but yeah, I did some Conway, Hello Darling and things.
Oh, yeah.
I could do it tonight. I think I got a froggy here.
So throughout the 70s, you were working in Bay City. Did you maintain that job still? Or were you there for 20 years?
No. We were switches back and forth from the Empire to the Sandbar. Same thing. Give me another $20 or $30.
But were you working the day job still at the grocery store?
Yeah.
So you lived in Midland, worked in Bay City, and you were bouncing between Bay City gigs at that point. Okay.
Yeah. The reason one time I quit music is because I was this assistant manager at this grocery store, and of course they had a key to the store. So I left one night. I left early and left the door open, unlocked. So the cops always used to check the doors. Mm-hmm. Well, they checked the door and left it open. Left it. Found out it was open. So they called the manager and called me. And I can't tell you what he called me.
He wasn't happy.
He wasn't really happy. So actually, I quit. I give the band a notice and quit. But I only quit for maybe 2 or 3 months, and then I was back at it again.
Uh-huh.
Hey, Butch, tell us about your induction into the Michigan Country Music Hall of Fame.
Oh yeah, that was kind of cool.
I'll bet it was.
The guy that used to own that little franchise, or what do you call it, was named Buzz Ryder, and he had a little deal here in Saginaw. It was held at a restaurant, and then he was getting a little old and his health wasn't good, so he sold the name and whatever else he had with it to a guy named Bill Ackerman, and that's way over in.
Well, I remember
Hastings, over by Hastings.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And when we started going over there, this was big. They had a flea market, and they had like 15 or 20,000 people for a weekend. And they brought in stars, all the older stars, and that went on for I think I played there for maybe 5 or 6 years, and that probably was in maybe in the 90s sometimes. But anyway, that went on for quite a while, and then I guess they had a nomination committee, and I was nominated, and they went ahead and put me in there. Then I also got just inducted into the Hall of Fame, and then they had a Pioneer Award. There's only 3 of those that were given out for all the Michigan entertainers, and I was one of them.
Wow.
I guess because I'd been around so long. I don't know if that means I was a pioneer. But then, to my surprise, another friend of mine named Dale Hafer went to the Iowa classic country thing, and he told, I don't know why, but he told him about me, and the guy calls me and said, would you like to be in the Iowa Hall of Fame? I said, I never heard of it, you know. But I said, well, send me some stuff. And so anyway, he sent it to me, and I said, yeah, it looks like a big deal. So I went down there, and now I'm in the Iowa Hall of Fame.
But that's called the Old Time Country Hall of Fame.
It's not really classic country.
Yeah, but it's not just for Iowa artists, right? It's
it's for everybody.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
It just happens to be in Iowa.
Yeah, right.
Kind of like the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame's in Cleveland,
right,
Ohio, but it's kind of for the world. Okay.
They want that when you say not classic, but old time. They won't allow electric. The only thing they allow is electric bass.
Oh.
Everything else has got to be acoustic.
Okay.
So
really?
Going back to rockabilly and all that. Then.
Yeah. So there's a lot of fiddles and banjos and things like that. And matter of fact, I got one song that it's called "If I Ever Need a Lady, I'll Call You." Well, I never did all the legal stuff. I don't know if I should say that, but I never got it. Okay. Well, this song might be all right. It's probably older than 20 years, but
I think you've published it by now.
Yeah, probably. It's Claude Gray had this song years and years ago. And well, anyway, to make a long story short, first year I was out there, here he comes walking in, the guy that wrote it and originally recorded it.
Oh, really?
So I was a little skitty, so I didn't even say hi to him. But it was a kind of a great country song. It's my favorite song on the my CD that I like. So
that's what I was going to bring up for your modern CDs here. That I noticed all cover songs.
Yeah.
I want some background on your songwriting, though. Did you do any of your own? How much songwriting do you have? How many songs of your own do you?
I would like to say we wrote one in high school, and I can't think of it. So let's not count that one.
Okay. But that wasn't interesting. You wanted to do covers.
I could just do covers, and I like to sing. So we wrote this. Gail Davies, that's a guy in Bay City. Do you don't remember his name? He lived in Bay City. He's wrote several songs.
Gail Sullivan.
No, Gail Davies.
Okay.
Gail Davies, and he wrote this song called "Like Yesterday," and like I was telling earlier. We wrote the tune and I wrote the music to it, but that's the only writing I ever did. But I just enjoy other people's singings, and I'm kind of a Mel Tillis type of guy, not real hillbilly, but good country stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you maintain your contact with Scotty Moore all those years, or did you just kind of one shot thing and that was it?
I guess I called him a couple different times after that to see if they could add some different stuff before they finalized it.
Oh, okay. That was the extent of that.
That was it, yeah.
Okay.
I did get to meet several of the stars, though. A guy named Narvel Phelps.
I'm sure.
Please forgive me, I think is one of them. I just heard him the other day. He's still got a voice. Oh, man.
Yeah.
But anyway, we backed him. We backed several stars, but he didn't have his own band. The only thing he had was his son played drums with him. And so we got to play with him quite a bit, and I got to know him real well. And Dave Dudley years ago, the guy truck
music.
6 days on the road. Yeah, that was a big hit.
And then Tanya Tucker, we backed her. And Del Reeves had a girl on the billboard. So yeah, but we had a lot of that. That kind of helped make our popularity when playing with those other guys.
Yeah.
Because
well, backing bands that come to town, that's a heavy duty thing. I mean,
yeah.
Can you give us some more names of that? Other names that people might recognize?
Well, we didn't back Ernest Tubb, but we booked him and we opened for him.
Wow.
And
sharing the stage is another good thing too. I was going to ask you about sharing the bill with some bands.
I got a little story about Ernest Tubb. There's something in this music booking business that when you book, you can't book within a few miles of the. Well, this is years ago. We were playing at the Grove in Sanford, and that was a hot place at this time because the Bossmen played out on the beach, and we played inside. So they were a real hot rock band, and we were a pretty hot country band. So then we did a little booking there. So we had Ernest Tubb come in one time, and he had played in Saginaw the night before. This was like a Friday in Saginaw, and we had him on Saturday. And so our crowd was bad.
Oh,
Was
really?
this at the Grove he played at?
Yeah, Ernest Tubb, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And so here's the funny part. We got all done. He got all through with the night, and we counted the money and didn't have enough. So we went out to Boston and talked to Ernest Tubb, and I said, because you played in Saginaw last night, we don't have enough money. He said, well, how much you got? So we told him. He said, that's enough. No, you don't see that very often.
No.
Wow.
But what a great guy.
He probably knew he couldn't promote it being the miles and all that, so he knew he was up against the fence anyway.
Right, yeah.
Wow.
He had, I think, even Billy Bird, who was a guitar player years ago, and I think he played with him at that time. Yeah.
You said Marty Robbins played in Midland.
Yes, at the Central Auditorium, and my daughter was 16 years old, and she did Paper Roses. We opened up for him too.
Wow.
And so Central is now the middle school.
Yeah, yeah.
But if that's before 1959, that would have been, I'm guessing, the high school.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
So this would have been like 57, 58, something like that.
Yeah, it could be that, or maybe. Oh no, it's later than that because my daughter was 16, so we got to do the math again. But that was her first time she ever sang, out in public, and to this day she won't sing that song anymore. She hates it.
No.
But she said her and I sing now a little bit for senior citizens, rest homes and things like that.
Beautiful.
Yeah. But,
and that concludes part 1 with Butch Heath with us here in the MMHP and the 989. We want to thank Butch and Scott Seeberger for both showing up. Part 2 will be back in 2 weeks, and we will have more of the extensive interview with Butch and his history. And we want to thank you all for tuning in and being a part of this.
The MMHP is hosted on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and our own Libsyn podcast site. You can also search MMHP989 on Facebook for up-to-the-minute information, as well as both Dr. J and Sir Fred's album picks of the week, posted every weekend. You can connect with Scott on the web at scottbakermusic.com, Dr. J at michiganrockandrolllegends.com, Sir Fred at fredrife.com, brought to you by Michigan Rock and Roll Legends, located both inside the Bay County Historical Museum on Washington Avenue, as well as Scotty's Sandbar on Evergreen Drive at the Bay City Middle Grounds.
On behalf of the hosts, Gary, Dr. J. Johnson, Sir Fred Rife, archivist and videographer Mike Beatty, and myself, this podcast wouldn't be here without Studio 163's Alan Garcia, the voice of MMHP, Mr. Eddie Switek, all of our guests, and you, the listeners.
You've been listening to the MMHP and the 989.